Welcome, Nishantha. I'm super excited to have you on the show. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about classroom management in middle school. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon. This is so fun to be the first guest in your podcast.
It's thrilling for me too. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest.
it's
I'm a little
thrilling.
nervous.
Yes, as am I, as am I. So I've been teaching for 13 years. I've been teaching in the same middle school, almost the same building for the last 13 years. And I've been teaching 7th and 8th graders, but mostly 7th graders. I have a bunch of hobbies, and one of them is like studying psychology and like thinking about human interaction and things like that. And the classroom has been a really good laboratory to kind of like put some ideas out there and kind of figure out this is idea work or this is like, just to kind of it's almost like a playground to see psychology in action. And you have like so many different chances. Like every day is like a new chance to try something new. And classroom management is like really, really about psychology than anything else, I would say. Oh, and also
Yeah.
I have a company called Acorn. We do like classroom management thingies, classroom management thingies. So I don't even know what it is. We're still working on it. So
I don't even know what we do as a company too. So yeah, so I used to teach middle school as well, not for as long as you, but I found in my own classroom and in the classrooms of all of my colleagues that if you were able to manage yourself and then after that manage the kids, that then you could have them reach cognitively demanding tasks, like actual learning that happens. And so it was really cool reading the article that you wrote on Substack and thinking about how we manage ourselves and then how, like we provide an environment where students can learn. So I'm really excited to talk about that. And yeah, thanks for being here. So I guess
yeah,
like to dive in, I'd love to understand. So that you wrote about a couple of different things, and one of the really interesting ones was that authority is conserved. So you wrote down, you said that when you walk into a space, if you're able in that space to be the authority, that exists and you're taking up that space. But if you are not taking up that authority, that a vacuum exists there and kids can feel that. So tell me a little bit about the conservation of authority.
Well, I think it's interesting because humans need a social hierarchy at all times. It's just like built into our programming. So in a classroom, you're kind of leaving your like home hierarchy and you're coming into this new place, especially if it's like a new type of situation and you're trying to figure out like who's going to keep me safe? Who's going to keep the like cuz like I think humans used to live in like a really chaotic world and like you would look to a leader to keep you safe, right? Or to like give meaning to the things that happen or that are happening in your environment. And that software is still in us. So like when we go to a classroom, it is like nerve-wracking, especially if you go from like elementary to middle school. And if there isn't like a leader there to like make you feel psychologically safe, then kids are going to create leaders. And some of those leaders are going to be like the bully, the kid that talks a lot, the class clown. Sometimes it's like the really charismatic, really great kid that wants to do good, but you can't always engineer that. So you have to be the leader so you can make everyone feel safe in order for them to learn. So if you abdicate that to someone else, they're not gonna be able to learn because they're gonna be anxious. Who's gonna keep me safe? What if there's a fire? What if there's a shooting? What if like if it's like these are like high stake things that we don't really think about, but it's like an unconscious equation that's happening in the kids' heads. So you have to be a leader. Otherwise, it's impossible to do really hard things because a lot of the cognitive energy is taken up by the psychological thing that could be very easily solved by just like stepping into like a leadership spot and saying, "Hey, I'm going to keep you safe. Listen to what I'm telling you. I am the authority. I'm also trying to teach you all these things." There's like this interesting idea like you can't be responsible for anyone without also having authority over them. If they're not gonna listen to you, then how can you be responsible for them? So when students come to your classroom, you are responsible for them. So you have to have authority over their safety and also their learning. So it's like a big serious thing, and I think you have to take it very seriously. Don't abdicate your authority and power to a 13-year-old. They can't handle it.
So I think what's so interesting about that is a couple of things. So the concept of authority here, I think, could be taken as like negative, like an imposition of will. And I think a lot of what you wrote and what I've heard you say before is not about imposing your will on students, but it's actually the opposite of that. And I think this is one of the sort of like it's a core value that I have which is like, I'm not going to force my students to do a thing. But if I invest them properly, if they trust me, they feel comfortable enough, then we can really move mountains. And so I think what was really, really interesting about that concept of authority is oftentimes we hear authority, we think like authoritarian, we think of like, like a strong man. It's like coming in and being like, no, it's going to be this way. And I think what was really interesting is that yours is a much more flexible version of the word authority that involves not just being the most willful of the group, but having confidence and not involving your ego in the conversation and the interaction, so that students can feel comfortable to to push back, not in a negative way, but like to express themselves. And I think the rigid version of authority is like, I am the one who teaches and you are quiet. Like a quiet classroom could look like authority. And authority could also look like, I'm going to let you all talk, but I'm going to give you very specific guidelines for that. So I'm curious, and I think the difference between those two classrooms is ego. It's like, what am I taking in? What do I expect from students? So can you talk to us a little bit more about what role ego plays in authority?
Yeah, so someone taught me this a long time ago. His name is John Deloney. It's on YouTube. People call him in and then they tell him about their relationship problems. And on one of the episodes,
teaching advice from a relationship expert.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing is that, right? Like, I mean,
it's totally a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so. And one of the things that he said that was really interesting was like, there's only certain people that is like allowed to hurt his feelings, and certain people that are allowed to like have access to like parts of his psychology that allow him to like feel certain ways. And these people are like his parents, his wife, his kids. I really like that idea to like compartmentalize your ego. So like there's only a certain amount of people that is allowed to like make me feel any kind of like strong emotion, and my students are not it. So like if I'm having a bad day, I know it's not my students, it's me that's like creating that. So that kind of allows you to like, it sounds very egocentric, like I am the one that's creating all this stuff, but I think it's creating a space, like a almost like a wall between how your students interact with you and how you feel about it is very important. And like there's a big saying that like I think about all the time. It's like, no matter what happens, I'll be okay. Like no matter how this class goes, no matter if there's like if I'm having a horrible interaction with a student, if I'm having a horrible lesson, if I'm having a bad interaction with another adult in this class, like in the school, no matter what happens, I'm gonna be okay because tomorrow I'll get to do this again. I think that's really an important thing, because students can kind of like sense that, and if you allow them to affect you, then you're kind of abdicating your authority again and creating a space for them to take ownership of something that they are not like mature enough to take ownership of. So kids are gonna try to hurt your feelings, do all this kind of stuff, but they don't know what they're doing. So like, you can't allow them to. It's not fair.
I feel like it's like there are like psychological games that I feel like kids will play in lieu of like learning, because like you're there. You're like, they're going to be there for 6 to 8 hours. And so you have a couple of options. One, you can engage with the content and learn. And the second is you can learn how to spar with other kids and with adults. And honestly, knowing a bunch of things about science or knowing a bunch of things about how to interact with other people, like, those are both very valuable things for like your ability to be successful in life. And so I feel like some teachers will make this, if you come in there and you say, I care so much about you complying with the things that I'm saying, that you force kids into a situation where instead of them grappling with whatever the cognitive demanding task that you give them, they're forced to sort of like interact with your ego. And that's a fun thing to play with. Like if you ever see people go into a situation and they're like, and they feel very egocentric in that situation. Like I've seen middle school kids that are like, oh boy, they look at that like, this is going to be fun. Messing with this person is going to be super fun. And I think that the level of caring, because what I think I hear you saying is that, like that So that one example was like, if you care, if you give too much vulnerability where the kids can impact your emotions, that essentially you give them the full agency to do whatever they want. And they're not going to be directional about that. It's going to be chaotic and random. You don't want that. Like, you have an objective. You're like, today we're going to do this thing. We're going to learn this thing. We're going to talk about this thing. I think that's really interesting. I think that there was a concept that, or like a quote that I heard, and I tried to find this, but I couldn't find the exact quote. But it's like there's like a chilling realization that a teacher has, which is that they set the weather in their classroom. And so if they come into a classroom and they are a thunderstorm, that it's going to be a mess that day. And if they come into the classroom and they are a peaceful, sunny day, and like you as the teacher, you come in with that the chances that you're going to have a good, productive class are much, much higher. And so there's like this realization, which is like, I set the weather in my classroom. And I think that a lot of teachers come in and they say, oh, like my students can't, or like these kids just won't, or I can't get them to blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that agency, I feel, and it sounds like what you're saying, lies in the teacher's hands. So like you decide, you're like, what am I going to bring in here? What baggage from earlier in the day, from earlier in the week, from the weekend, or whatever it is, am I going to bring in here? And how much am I going to like force that upon these kids who are also coming in with like stuff that happened? So yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting.
I like this idea of like this, what you're talking about is like the locus of control. Like, like this, there's like a saying, give me the strength to like know what I can control. Like I forgot the name, but there's like a very famous quote around this. And like, there's like really two things that people try to control. That like, as new teachers, you try to be liked because you think that's how you get cooperation. But I think like as a veteran teacher, we all know like trust is what you really want. So like, there's a lot of ways to get to like, and that a lot of those is like, comes from a thing of like, I need your approval, whereas trust is, I am going to act with such like a certain character. You may not approve of this, you may not like this, you may like it, you may not like it, but at the end I am going to believe what you say, and your thoughts, your actions, and your deeds are coherent. They're all working towards one thing. And as a teacher, you want to move towards trust rather than like. And if you move towards trust, you will often get the like afterwards anyways.
Totally. So I think that when I hear the word like authority, and I think about it in the context of a classroom, the most productive classrooms that I have been in or observed, it's involved deep trust. And so it's not authoritative in the sense that like I impose my will upon you. The trust is so deep, and the kids know you're going to be consistent, you're going to be fair, and that when you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it, whether they like it or not. And if you hold those things and you show them day after day after day that like your expectations are here, and you hold them to that every single day, that you establish an environment of trust where you can be vulnerable, they can be vulnerable, and then you can move on from there. The best classrooms that I've ever seen or that I've been a part of have involved that, where it's not about the kids' egos. It's not about my ego. It's really just about us all working together. And it's not going to be easy to get from here to here. And we have to be able to trust each other. They have to trust me and I have to trust them. Because like at a certain point, imposing your will upon a group of kids, you remove their agency. And middle school is a really interesting time. This is what I was going to segue into earlier, where kids are going from being in elementary school and having pretty low agency. And then some middle schoolers are picking up their one or two kids on the way home. They feed and help them with their homework. And like they are parents, like they're high agency, like they take care of themselves and they're caretakers for others. And I think it's really interesting to think about agency and how much control you give them over their own agency. And that trust looks like you exert enough control, and that there's a balance in how much agency they have. They know what the floor. So like this is the bare minimum. You must be like, if your pencil breaks, you need to go figure that out and fix it. If you forgot your folder and you don't have your homework, you need to figure that out. Like that is the floor. And then the ceiling is, but don't just get up and cause chaos in the classroom. That's too far. I know another thing that we've talked about before is like kind of like what that looks like for students, like how much freedom you give them. And so do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Like how do you think teachers can set guidelines for students, in particular in middle school, but I think this is also relevant in high school too, where again, like kids have low or high agency depending on what their home life and situation looks like. But what advice would you give teachers or teacher leaders that are coaching teachers to like establish that kind of like that baseline, and then also that ceiling, like don't go above this line, that's too much?
Yeah, I think this is like progressive. What's that term where like you like show them how to do it, and then you
gradual
hold their
release
hands.
of gradual release of
Yes,
control. Yeah.
this is that. This is that, but with like classroom procedures, right? Like if you procedurize everything and not say like be a good student or like these are the middle school social skills, and then you turn those into procedures, you can actually see how good they are at those procedures. And then if the whole class or group of kids are like very good at sticking to those procedures in the expectations that you set for them, you can slowly not check those anymore, right? This is like this is how all relationships work. In the beginning, you probably didn't trust your wife as much as you trust her today, but like through actions and deeds and like promises kept and like procedures being held and like boundaries being held, you now trust her with your life, your kids, your money, with everything, because there's a relationship and a history there to kind of like substantiate that trust. So trust goes both ways. If you're being a jerk to your students, if you're like having a bad day and you take it out on them, if you're not fair, they're not going to trust you. The same way that if a kid is doing their work, working hard, being kind, doing everything they need to do, then you're going to be able to trust them a month from now, 2 months from now. But towards the end of the year, you can do very, very challenging activities that don't require you to do any classroom management. Because I think a lot of people try to do like very hard, like pedagogical, challenging, like things that are like super impactful, but they can't get there because there's like energy cost to maintain that like classroom management. And if your energy cost is like 50% of the lesson, and you like have to like constantly correct people, get people to do the right thing, then you're leaking a lot of your energy that could be going to the lesson, that activity. You can only get to like so many levels of it. So this is like this is my strongest thing. I'm like very, very good at establishing trust, and then like being able to let go, where the class just does things, they regulate their like each other. I don't have to like talk about procedures after like the first 2-3 months. Things just work. I just say the word and it just happens, and that makes it so that teaching is very, very easy at that point, because you're only worrying about like weird things that happen. Maybe there's a kid that is having a hard time at home, or maybe there's something going on so you can kind of focus on those, or like some really interesting ideas that you can implement in your classroom, because you have all this like free cognitive energy that you're not spending on classroom management. So you can like go build software to help your class, or you can go do like a really challenging lab where there's a lot of interesting space that opens up in your head as a teacher, because now you built this thing where the people that are learning with you and learning from you trust you, and you trust these people to do what they're supposed to be doing, even if you're not there. Like even when there's a substitute, like, yo, these kids are going to get this done because we have like this thing that we both believe in that's like based on mutual trust. But in the beginning, you have to be very, very strict about all of this.
What I hear you kind of like getting at is that at the end of the year, if you've done a good job setting things up, then you don't have to expend energy at that time.
No.
But what I'm gathering from what you're saying, which I agree fully with this, is that at the very beginning of the year, the vast majority of your energy should be spent on establishing those norms, being consistent, and getting students like doing what you say. It's like if you say you're going to do a thing, that you do that thing, and you hold them to a standard. And so they know that level of consistency that they should expect throughout. And if you change, or if the line slides, like the goalposts move over time, then they'll know that they can't trust you. One of my favorite things was to say, let's build a bunch of norms. What does a good classroom look like? Because they know, they've been in them before. And then I'm like, what does not look good? Like what is not helpful in a classroom? And they know, because they've been in classrooms that have not been helpful. And they write those things down. We put them together, all of them. I put them up on the wall. And literally, as long as I hold myself to those standards that are up there, and they hold themselves consistently day after day, like in the first couple of weeks, that's all you focus on are those norms and not content, then your run rate, your ability, like your capacity later in the year is tremendous, because in the first, for the first 2 weeks, you do like no content. At the very beginning, all you're doing is building those norms, starting to establish consistency, and that with those things, trust will happen, and then tremendous things can happen after that. But the very beginning has to be spent. Don't like do your scientific method unit and like run right into that first unit on cells or plate tectonics or whatever it is. First, you have to spend your time building those norms, building consistency, establishing that baseline of trust, and then later on, that's where you reap all of the benefits.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think you're exactly right. I would say that you can do like your content immediately, but the challenge rating of that content has to be very, very low, right? So like you're not trying to get them to think beyond like, you as a science teacher, you want them to like be able to make cognitive leaps and jumps and invent things and like do all these different things throughout the lesson. But I think you can't do that because what's happening is like it's like a learning curve. So like it's like when you're reading a really interesting book, like a fantasy novel or something, the first couple of pages are going to be like kind of get you into buying into the world and like building that world. And then once the world is built, you can introduce like interesting characters and like like the interesting like plot twists and things like that. But in the beginning, you're just literally trying to onboard them into like this world that has procedures, classroom norms, the way we treat each other, just these things that are like seem normal to you because you've been teaching for 10 years. Like you just you raise your hand if you want to get up because we don't know why you're up. Why are you up? Are you up because you want to hurt someone? Are you trying to steal something? Are you trying to go to the bathroom? Like we know in our head as an adult, like, yeah, just let everyone know what you're doing so everyone feels comfortable. But as a kid, you don't know that. So we're trying to slowly like build them into this world. And I think after you have that world built, you can kind of play. So and then the playing is like, challenging labs or like interesting discussions or like celebrating someone's birthday, like because like they're having a bad day. Like those things you just can't do them on the first day because they think your class is going to be chaos. Like you can't crack jokes in the first week of school because they think this is normal, right? So like you got to hold your personality back a little bit, and you have to have the courage to be disliked.
I think a great way to wrap up this conversation would be to talk about that, which is like, the mission is what you're anchored to instead of their approval. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so basically don't be the kid's friend. You're not their family. You're not their counselor. You're none of those things. The reason why, you can act as those roles, but your kid has friends. They have parents. They have a counselor. They have other adults that want to be liked by them, but they only have one science teacher, and that's you. You're it for the whole year, and that's an important, very serious job because they might not have another science teacher as good as you in middle school or even high school. You could be the last one they had. So it's like a very serious job, and you got to put that job before all the other jobs. And that's what you're paid to do. Like you're a professional teacher. So that's like a police officer or like a doctor or like a lawyer. It's like a professional job that has like a lot of responsibility and it's very serious. And you could take it very seriously. I know I'm a middle school science teacher. Like it's not that serious, but like you can take it very seriously. I don't think society values us that much as like, oh, you're a teacher, like you get the summers off. Your job seems like, like you have all these like politicians, saying all this stuff about us. But I think you can take yourself seriously. And if you love your job and you think this is important, if you don't think it's important, just go get another one, like a different job. But like if you want to keep this profession, take it very seriously.
I think that the seriousness that you're talking about isn't necessarily your demeanor, but it's like with the passion and the effort with which you exert in that environment. And so like you can be goofy, like as a middle school science teacher, and like you can crack jokes, but it's like, how seriously are you pulling, like, are you able, I feel like the best middle school sense of humor I've ever seen is like, as teachers are like super serious, like today, like we're going to do this. And they're like driving the kids to it. And then all of a sudden you just like look at a kid and you're like, and like the kid doesn't see it come in and like nobody sees it. And all of a sudden like that kid's like, what just happened? Did I just like hallucinate for a second? And then like you keep on going and like, so you can like play. Seriousness isn't a lack of play. It's just like how much effort and like how much do you want this to be the best that it can be?
Like I think a lot of my classroom, the first couple of months is not fun. Towards the middle of the class, it's often my class is the favorite class that they've had in middle school because we get to do a lot of fun things, and I'm a pretty nice guy once you are in like bought into the program, So yeah, you can have serious fun. It's like a thing. It's like it's probably the best fun is when you're like really challenging yourself and doing something very hard. It's kind of silly and goofy and all those other things as well. So yeah.
So you can be a middle school kid, you can be a middle school teacher, but take your job and like what you came there to do seriously. All right, Nishantha, this is awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. It was an absolute pleasure to get to talk with you. I feel like I learned a lot about kind of like what some of the values that a really, really good middle school science teacher would have in terms of like where to put your ego, what kind of approval to seek or not to seek, and then sort of like what authority can look like in a middle school classroom where you are guiding the students to where you need them to go, but still giving them agency, well guided, well intentioned agency to do the things that they want to do and also that you need them to do. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It was wonderful having you on.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I appreciate. Yeah, it was fun hanging out with you. Hopefully, hopefully we can do it again.
Can't wait.